I am joined by Salman Hameed, who is a professor at Hampshire College. Amazing initiative that aims to promote science education and awareness among people in general, but especially children. And not just in Pakistan, but in South Asia and globally.
Yeah, you cannot solve every problem. Problems are huge. And what you can do is you can take a small slice and try to do it well. In 2020, as the pandemic hit, in Pakistan, actually, at that time, the government did a pretty smart thing. And that was they were very quick to start teleschool. This was in April. That was a decision made very quickly, which was a sort of like daytime station channel where they were bringing in programming for kids who are not going to school.
Hello and welcome back. I am joined by Salman Hameed, who is a professor at Hampshire College and a very dynamic individual based here in the United States. And the reason I'm going to talk to him is not so much about his work at Hampshire College, but in fact, his amazing initiative that aims to promote science education and awareness among people in general, but especially children, and not just in Pakistan, but in South Asia and globally. So his very well-known initiative, Kainaat Studios, is something on YouTube. You must take a look at that and click and subscribe to the channel because it provides you with amazing information. If you don't know about astronomy, about science, about all the great details of life and the universe that you wanted to understand. So welcome, Salman. Thank you for your time. Before I begin, I would like to just you to quickly sort of tell us what prompted you to start this particular initiative. I mean, it is a labor of love, I know that, and of course you're very driven and passionate about it, but what was the sort of intellectual basis with which you started this particular initiative?
Oh, well, thank you, Raza, for inviting me and for a wonderful introduction as well. So I think, and I've sort of like said this story before at other places, but I mean, I think to me, it's a pretty straightforward connection. I'm an astronomer. That's where my sort of like PhD and that's where my training is. And I grew up in Pakistan, in Karachi. And I'm an astronomer today, and I'm talking to you right now because of television, because I was fascinated by the first episode of Carl Sagan's Cosmos, right? I mean, so it was shown in Pakistan in 1984, and I didn't know that you could actually be an astronomer, or astronomy is a field, academic field, because there were not many examples in Pakistan for that. And so for me, and it took a long time. I mean, I came here to the US for my undergraduate in physics and astronomy, got my PhD. Now I have a faculty position at Hampshire College. I moved a little bit away and work on science and society. But that first instance, that thing has stayed with me. And so the question was, okay, so if somebody, Sagan, changed my life, and by the way, he changed many people's lives. I mean, I'm just one person. And he was not even from Pakistan. He was not from our culture. We didn't have common language of cultural context. And yet, just through television, just through video, he changed somebody's life. And so what if you create content that, if it's for South Asia, for Pakistan, or for greater South Asia and India as well, and you can speak that language, you can bring in cultural examples, you can bring in the context, and you look like it. Representation matters, as Raza, sort of like, how much important that is. Then that can actually make an impact. So that was the reason I started making videos a few years ago, and it wasn't clear whether people would come or not, but it has worked out well.
Oh yeah, like how? I mean, I'm an avid subscriber and I don't miss any particular episode because, I mean, there's so much I don't know about science, about astronomy, about the stars. But anyway, so this response has been terrific. But, would you like to, I mean, I do want to pick up this area. I mean, in general, science education globally is in crisis and is a challenge. but in Pakistan particularly, where the vast majority of students, young people, do not have access to quality instruction in science or astronomy and scientific issues. And tell me a little bit about that, in general, and then I'll get to the next point, which is how are initiatives like you filling in that gap?
Okay, so I'm going to answer it, even the first question, in two parts before we get to the second part. What I'm going to say is, yeah, it's tricky in terms of how do you communicate science and what you can do. And as I mentioned, I mean, I think maybe it's the fact that, when you are really young, you have a lot of idealism and then you become a lot more practical later on. So I'm now a lot more practical in the sense that, yeah, you cannot solve every problem. Problems are huge. And what you can do is you can take a small slice and try to do it well, right? Whatever you are trying to do. And I think that is the element that I focus on. So what we are trying to do, and just to be clear, we are not producing things that can be substituted as lectures. We are not producing content that people can get a degree from. But what our emphasis is to build curiosity.
Absolutely.
That's the key thing. So we use astronomy so our goal is not to produce 1,000 astronomers. That's not the goal, not even 1,000 scientists. Our goal is that, look, science is important. We live in a world that is shaped by science. So you just think about the world in a curious way. You look outside, you see water flowing, and you go like, wow, why is this water flowing that way, right? And so you think about the universe and you go like, hey, the sun is shining. Wait a minute. What powers the sun? So simple elements of curiosity, because that in some sense, I mean, oftentimes people focus on, okay, so we need to fix education. Let's build schools, which is needed because there are fewer schools and so on and so forth. But after a while, you can build schools, but you have to focus on the spirit of inquiry, because that's the engine. You can have a school, but if you don't have the engine in it, then ultimately you are left with a building, right?
Yes.
Now, we are not building. So again, I'm not saying that building schools is not a good thing. What I'm saying is that our goal is to focus on building curiosity, because once you are interested in things, and it doesn't even have to be science, just question, just ask simple questions, simple things. That's what we need. And so our videos, so our main channel is Kainaat Astronomy in Urdu, which is actually for anybody. For you, that's where the videos that you also watch, and for others, where we make about 15 to 20-minute videos, take a news story, sort of like, James Webb Space Telescope or some results that come out, and not just sort of like give facts. People can get facts from Wikipedia, people can get facts from, but rather ask questions. Wait a minute, why were people looking at this object, for example, an exoplanet, to begin with? What's so interesting about it? Or why is this galaxy interesting? Again, going back to the foundational questions of curiosity. Now, if I can specifically answer your question about kids as well. So in 2020, as the pandemic hit, in Pakistan, actually, at that time, the government did a pretty smart thing. And that was, they were very quick to start teleschool. This was in April. That was a decision made very quickly, which was a sort of like daytime station channel, where they were bringing in programming for kids who were not going to school. And in fact, one of the things that was a good thing about it was they were trying to get also kids, because there are many kids in Pakistan who never go to school, right? So that was it. But pandemic, in some sense, evened out certain cases, because even privileged kids were not going to school. So at that time, it was such a quick thing, and they had to hurry up. So they came up with sort of like, anybody who had content, they were looking for it. And so they asked us, we were like, yes, we provided them content, but it wasn't aimed at kids. If you are making content, you have to shape it according to what the audience is. And so we asked, it's like, what if we create content just for kids as well? And they said, sure. And so now we have a 10-part series, which is called Kainaat Kids, which is also available on YouTube, which has younger hosts, that has animation as well. And we try to, again, these are 10-minute videos each, and we try to align the concepts of astronomy in various grade levels in the Pakistani curriculum. And we try to, again, focuses on thinking about curiosity and building interest in it. So now we have that as well, and we are trying to expand that to have a weekly kids astronomy show that will be starting in about a month and a half or 2 months time. So we want to keep on engaged.
That's amazing. And I think that is such a unique way of, reaching out to children who may not be getting adequate science instruction. And, my earlier question, I just want to clarify, Salman, that obviously I was not talking about science education in terms of a particular degree or diploma, because you see, I mean, we also read physics and chemistry and whatnot, and it makes you, helps you question things. It helps you, delve deeper into the physical phenomena or whatever. And I think that is something that is missing. But this particular initiative that you want to do with children, I'm really interested in that, because you also have plans to go and work with people on ground in Pakistan. And tell us a bit more about that, and where do things stand in that respect?
So there are, again, I'm going to mention a couple of things. One is there are actually people who are working on the ground separate than us as well. And I do want to give them credit, because there are a lot of initiatives, like there is Science Fuse, for example. It's an organization that gives demos to schools and things like that, run by Lala Rukh. And there's Pakistan Science Club. So I do want to give them credit. On the ground, there are some people that are dedicated to that. Where we come in, what we are trying to do is to build astronomy activities online, and that can turn into astronomy clubs over there. Again, which is that if you can think about steps, if somebody gets interested in astronomy and they go like, hey, wait a minute, but now what? What should I do? Well, then you can actually start up a club. Well, what does the club do? You see, so then the problem comes in, what kind of activities? So what we are designing is an online activity set, which will have videos as well on how to conduct those activities, and that you can start in your own school, in your own, wherever you are, and to build upon that. So we are trying to provide guidance, advising regarding that. And with some schools in Lahore in particular, because that's where some of our people that are working, they are in there, we will be working directly with schools, but in other places, it's going to be more an online, a web of schools that can get interconnected. And as they move forward, they can build telescopes, they can actually move into amateur astronomy clubs, which actually in Pakistan, I should mention, there are wonderful astronomy clubs in Lahore, in Karachi, in Islamabad. Those are 3 big ones, but there are in other places as well. They can then join there. So I think what I would describe is that there is raw material in some sense there. You have to give the right kind of conditions, and these things can sprout. Things can change within 5-10 year period. You just need to, unfortunately, the political situation, as you know very well, it doesn't allow it, but the raw material is there, and there are people who are dedicated to these things, and it's amazing to see those stories.
Right. That's really interesting. And these, so tell us a bit more about, you mentioned all these people who are doing some amazing work, and you are going to collaborate with them and working with them. So for, Pakistanis abroad, and especially North America or Europe, how can they support such initiatives? This is such an important part of, our giving.
Yeah, so I would describe it in a slightly different way. Or provide an alternative. Again, oftentimes I think we have moved from and there is still a lot of charity, or a lot of giving goes to religious institutions. They also go to hospitals. They also go to schools.
Yes.
science is crucial.
Correct.
And again, I'm not saying that, hey, take money away. There are a lot of needs everywhere. But look, if we want to think of Pakistan, for example, as a country that's not just surviving, that can do something better, right? Then you have to think about building scientific structures over there. How do you do that? As I mentioned, there are wonderful actually there are for-profits or non-profits. There are NGOs in Pakistan. It can be a little bit different, but Pakistan Science Club, this is a wonderful group that is based in Karachi. So that is very good. Science Fuse, as I mentioned. And if you, we also look for support. So I don't want to remove us from the thing as well, but we are registered here in the US as a 501c3 nonprofit. And so but I think we need a frame in which we don't think of science as luxury, right? In fact, I would say two things regarding that. One, science should not be considered as luxury, nor science should simply be considered as instrumental, meaning to say the buzzword right now is STEM, right? So science, technology, whatever, the mathematics and those type of things, engineering and mathematics, right? I think these type of things become a buzzwords, and then whatever you are doing, you just add STEM to that and you go like, this is science. What I would like is to think a little bit broadly, again, to the spirit of inquiry, which includes science. I think that would be a slightly different type of thinking. It's a little bit more abstract because you are not just simply fixing the immediate symptom, whatever you are saying, but rather you are fixing the cause. And so how do we build curiosity? How do we support a structure that can build curiosity in Pakistan? Because that is going to have a payoff. Otherwise, we can keep on fixing the immediate symptoms while never actually making a bigger steps forward.
Agreed, absolutely. Now that you are an educationist as well, and you know about how higher education works here in the US, how it works in Pakistan. So tell us a little bit about fixing this particular aspect of various education levels. And I'm personally more interested in higher education because that's where you get the teachers from. That's where you get researchers, scientists, you see. So a bit of that, I think this is a good opportunity.
I myself am in a liberal arts college, and Raza, you are very familiar with those as well. And I think, in some sense, and this is also one of those things that is gaining more steam in that context, that liberal arts education is something that can make you more well-rounded. We have engineering and medical universities and things like that, but perhaps we can build liberal arts universities or schools in Pakistan. Now, the question is, what kind of liberal arts, right? I am still in favor of, again, building something that can also take you towards curiosity and scientific thinking. Sometimes, especially in post-colonial contexts and things like that, sometimes you throw baby with the bathwater, where when you have these things within the post-colonial context, you go like, oh, that kind of science is colonial and things like that. And especially these type of things, unfortunately, can occur in liberal arts environments. And I'm talking about it from the context that I am at a liberal arts college where these kind of tensions come in.
Right.
I think the what sort of like Feynman, the physicist, sort of like said, and I just love those words in the sense where he talks about the pleasure of finding things out, right? That you can have liberal arts education, you can have sort of like thinking about whatever context you are thinking about a subject, and there could be a notion of sort of like a little bit of a loss, and there is a lot to lament. There are a lot of things, again, that are problem. We live in a world right now, global warming or climate change, for example, and there are all these threats are coming in. Sure, there is a colonial legacy yes, those are things there. There are unbelievable injustices, in particular, sort of like, in Pakistan and in the context of Pakistan. I mean, just flooding from last year, we encounter those things. And I think dealing with those issues of justice are crucial. But
Right.
don't leave the thing about the pleasure of finding things out too. It's not, there is also figuring it out. For example, how a leaf gets its energy from, like, figuring it out, for example, how the moon was, like, what were the origins of the moon, or can there be life elsewhere or not? Those are also questions that I think are essential in terms of when you are thinking about higher education. So I think there has to be, and I'm not saying things that are new, but these are things that are being battled here in the US as well, in terms of how do you have these kind of pre-inquiry. Sometimes those issues also come in clash with various other things as well. So I'm not saying that it's a clear-cut thing, but I think there is this, as a scientist, sort of like, thinking about it, like, there is such joy and pleasure if you figure out something, even if sort of like, just how this thing works. I think somehow if we can get that spirit in there, that would be lovely. Of course, easier said than done, but that's what I would say. Like, if you're thinking about education system in Pakistan or anywhere, that
Right.
level of thing, that's something, and not to mention sort of like, of course, a huge degree of skepticism, because I think now the world is going to a place where you have to figure out what is fact or what is a fake, and those kind of things. And all of that comes in from inquiry, from figuring it out how things work. I think would be needed.
That's what exactly, very well put. And I think, Salman, we need to really continue this conversation, because I want to tell the viewers that, your primary area of expertise about science in the Muslim world, in the history of for Muslims, in Muslim civilization, if you permit to permit me to use that term, that is something, an area where I think we really need to talk about. And I think because a lot of people here in the West, a lot of people in Pakistan as well, are unfamiliar with that whole tradition that we are inheritors of. But that's for another date. Salman, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that those who watch this video will go to Kainaat Studio, subscribe and like all their videos, and watch them, more importantly.
And if I could mention, because this is in English, because just last month we actually launched our English channel as well. It's Kainaat Astronomy in English, where obviously the videos are in English, but there actually a lot of the focus is also going to be on space ethics, the ethics of expansion into space, especially settlements, human settlements on the moon in particular, but also on Mars and other places. And again, with this balance, trying to figure out that we do that exploration in a responsible and sustainable way while maintaining our curiosity. So please, that will be populated more and more as well. So please check out English, Urdu, both of those channels, and Kainaat Kids as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Salman, and goodbye, viewers.
Thank you so much.